Nothing motivates me aside from eating and sleeping. I lie in my bed all day, not on my computer, not on my phone, not doing anything. I just lie there thinking, what's happening to me? I would say that you are, and this is not a diagnostic comment, and I don't know enough about you to provide that sort of information, but I would recommend that you see a therapist and be screened for depression, because that's what it looks like to me. And I would say that if it's depression, you should do something about it, because depression is very hard on people. It produces a lot of stress hormones like cortisol, and that can hurt you. You know, if it's only been a couple of days, I wouldn't worry about it. But if it's a chronic pattern, then you should go talk to somebody, even your family doctor, you know, and there's always the possibility that a low dose of an antidepressant might be worth trying. You'd know in a month if it fixed you, but I would say don't stay in that situation, man. Go find out. Do whatever you have to get out of it. And especially the fact that you're not on your computer or not on your phone, not doing anything. You know, you're ruminating. That's just lying there thinking. That's loops of negative emotion. And you don't have any positive emotion, you know. That's why you're not on your computer or your phone. And so one of the characteristics of depression, or I suppose two of the characteristics, is a decrease in positive motivation. And so that means that you're not interested in anything, and an increase in negative emotion, and that can manifest itself in that just lying there thinking, you know. So go talk to someone. Go talk to someone. Tell someone that this is happening. Get to your family doctor. Let them know what's happening. Get them to give you a depression screening, and see what you can do about it, because there are effective treatments for depression, and sometimes antidepressants work like an absolute charm. What advice would you give to someone looking to quit porn? Well, I gave some advice a little earlier about quitting alcohol, you know, and I would say it isn't that you're trying to quit porn. It's not the right way to think about it. The right way to think about it is that you're trying to figure out how to have a better life. And so you have to figure out, well, I would say do the future authoring program and keep your porn addiction in mind and think. So in the first part of the future authoring program, it asks you a bunch of questions about what your life could be like in 3 to 5 years if you took care of yourself like you were someone that you cared for. And then it asks you questions about your friends and your family and your career and your time outside of work and your health and, you know, the important dimensions of life. And it asks you to spend 20 minutes writing about how good your life could be in 3 to 5 years if you got your act together and did what was good for you. And then it asked you to write about the hell you could be in if you didn't. And so I would say you really need to do that, because porn isn't the issue. The issue is that you're not living your life the way you want to. And so you need a vision of life that's more compelling than the porn. And you need a counter vision too that frightens you, you know, because otherwise porn is obviously extraordinarily gratifying in the short term, but you seem to be suffering from the medium to long-term consequences of its use. And so you need a story that you can tell yourself that's really deeply thought through about why this is not appropriate for you, how it's hurting you, and how it's minimizing you and perhaps making you embarrassed and ashamed and more socially isolated and all of that. So I would say think about it as cleaning up your psyche and your behavior rather than merely stopping porn. You also might want to write down, and you could do this in the negative vision part of the future authoring program. You got to write down everything bad that you think porn is doing to you, because obviously you have some suspicions that this is not good for you, right? That it's actually harming you in some important way. And so you need to be fully cognizant of what those ways are, and then take them seriously and decide if that's the pathway through life on which you wish to travel. And so, and then I would also say good luck to you. You know, it's a very good idea to identify one of your weaknesses and work on it. You can strengthen yourself substantially by doing that. What is your advice for finding a sane, sound therapist?
And do you think a fruitful psychotherapeutic relationship requires a therapist to have specific temperamental compatibility or even literacy and interests that align with the patient? Well, I would say with regards to finding a sane and sound therapist, there's some practical things you can do. I guess this is more relevant if you live in North America, and I'm not sure exactly what the training requirements are in other places in the world, but your best bet, I would say, is to find someone who's appropriately trained, and I would regard someone who's appropriately trained as a psychotherapist to be someone who's, I think you're safer if you go with someone who's trained at one of the big research schools and you have a therapist who's well-versed in psychotherapeutic practice, but who's also sufficiently educated scientifically to be able to understand the scientific literature. And you can be pretty certain of that if you find a therapist who's got their PhD rather than a PsyD. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with PsyDs. If they received their PhD from an American Psychological Association approved school of clinical psychology. And those schools operate under what's called the Boulder model, and the Boulder model promotes science practitioner as the optimal ideal combination for a psychotherapist. So someone who's trained psychotherapeutically, but also has research experience and can understand the relevant scientific literature as it pertains to mental health. So that would be the first thing. The second thing I would say is, go to see a psychotherapist once and maybe go to see a couple of them and find someone that listens to you, because the psychotherapist shouldn't be someone who solves your problems for you or really offers you advice, although sometimes that can be helpful. Really what the psychotherapist should do is be someone who can help you understand what problem it is that you're facing so that can be delineated properly, to help you articulate what it is that you want, so what your vision of mental health might be and what you'd like to attain in psychotherapy, and then who helps you strategize towards that end. And so you want someone who will really listen to you, that you feel comfortable telling the truth to, because that's also incredibly important. If you can't tell your psychotherapist the truth, then you're not going to get anywhere in therapy, because you won't be able to actually outline the nature of your fundamental problems. So that's vital. And go see someone and see if you're happy with the way that you're interacting with them. That's the most relevant issue. So that's the first question. Now, the next one was, do I think a fruitful psychotherapeutic relationship requires a therapist to have specific temperamental compatibility or even literacy and interests that align with the patient? I think it's difficult to work with a therapist who is less intelligent than you are. That's kind of a rough way of conceptualizing it, but a lot of what a therapist does is help you strategize, and the person has to be able to think analytically and probably at least to some degree with the same degree of complexity that you're capable of. It's not necessarily a good idea to be able to outthink your therapist. So, was there ever a time when you saw a therapist of some kind? Well, no, actually, I haven't ever seen a therapist, and that might seem strange, I suppose, given that I am a psychologist. I don't really like talking about my problems with other people, as it turns out. I'd rather keep them to myself. And but I would say, having said that, is that I've read an awful lot of the writings of the great clinical psychologists and psychiatrists, and I would say that I've used them as psychotherapeutic aids, and I think that plays a very similar role, or that can play a very similar role.